The crackle of dry leaves under heavy boots snapped me awake before dawn. I wasn't dreaming. I knew that sound. Someone was in my yard again. I eased open the creaky screen door, the chill morning air biting at my skin, and peered through the dark. And there he was, silhouetted against the pale glow of the street lamp, his shoulders squared, a clipboard in his hand, and that smug grin that made my blood boil. The HOA patrol. The same man who had hopped my fence twice last week, uninvited, prowling around my property as if he owned the place. 35, tall, lean, with that military buzz cut and the look of a man who believed rules bent only for him. I pressed my palm against the porch railing, the wood splintering under my grip as rage mixed with disbelief. My fence wasn't just any fence. I'd built it with my own two hands, sanded each post, hammered every nail, the smell of pine lingering long after I finished. This land, this house, this gate, it was mine. My late wife and I bought it together, and every corner was heavy with memory. Yet this patrol strutted across it like I was some trespasser. He swung his leg over the fence again, his boots landing softly on my grass. My heart thudded in my chest. He didn't knock. He didn't call. He just entered. The audacity of it burned through me like acid. I stayed hidden in the shadows, breathing slowly, my pulse hammering in my ears. He scribbled something onto his clipboard, glanced at my shed, at my tools, at the old oak tree that shaded the porch where I now stood frozen. I swear he smirked, as though already drafting some fine or violation that would tighten his grip on me. That was when my eyes drifted to the gate, the new addition, my project for the past week, a heavy iron frame, sturdy hinges, and wires hidden beneath the paint. It looked ordinary, just another gate in another old man's yard. But I knew what it could do. I had spent nights wiring it, testing it, adjusting it, my war chest, my last defense. And now, standing on the porch with the faint hum of current whispering in the cool night air, I thought about what would happen if he touched it, if he tried to push it open the way he had before. My lips curled into the faintest smile, though my chest was still tight with nerves. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. But still, a question gnawed at me, even as the patrol crept closer to the gate, his fingers brushing against the cold iron. Would the trap I'd set finally stop him? Or would it drag me into a bigger war I wasn't prepared to fight? I should probably introduce myself before you think I'm just some cranky old man with too much time on his hands. My name is Thomas Whitaker, though most people in town just call me Tom, or more often these days, Grandpa Tom. I'm 70 years old, widowed for the last 9, and I live alone in the house my wife Margaret and I bought 42 years ago. It's a modest home, nothing flashy, but it's mine. A single-story ranch with white siding that I repaint every 5 years, shutters the color of a stormy sea, and a porch where I've drunk more coffee than I could ever count. There's a vegetable garden in the back, an oak tree in the front, older than I am, and a little workshop shed where I fix things. Everything from old radios to broken chairs. This house isn't just a structure, it's memory carved into wood and brick. Margaret's laughter is still on the kitchen walls. My children's footprints are still in the backyard soil. And every nail, every plank, every blade of grass has felt my hand. That's why the idea of someone treating it like their property, stepping on it, judging it, makes my blood simmer. For most of my life here, neighbors were kind. We'd share pies at Thanksgiving, lend tools when needed, and wave across the fence. That's what a community was supposed to be. But then came the HOA, a small group at first, barely noticeable, until the younger crowd moved in. Folks who thought order and rules were more important than people. They voted in a patrol system, an enforcer, they called it. That enforcer is the man who now keeps me awake at night. His name is Derek Miller. 35 years old, sharp-jawed, always in pressed khakis and polished boots, with the permanent look of a man checking for dust on your shoes. He came to this neighborhood with one mission: control. They say he used to be a security contractor overseas, though he never talks about it. Instead, he walks these streets like a general without an army, clipboard in hand, searching for violations. The first time he approached me, it wasn't even civil. I was in the garden, dirt under my nails, the scent of tomatoes and basil rising in the heat. He leaned on my fence and said, "You know your shed doesn't match the color palette approved by the HOA. No hello, no introduction, just accusation." I chuckled then, thought it was a joke. "Son, this shed's been here longer than you've been alive," I said, wiping sweat from my brow. "Built it myself in '89. I'm not about to repaint it because you think beige is prettier than cedar." His smile was thin, almost rehearsed. "Rules are rules, Mr. Whitaker. Non-compliance can lead to fines." That was the start. A shed. A damn shed. Weeks later, he was back. This time, about my fence posts. "Too high by regulation standards," he said. I measured them myself, exactly 6 feet as always. He claimed his tape read otherwise. Then it was my lawn, then the tree branches, then the so-called improper storage of tools behind my shed. Each visit, his eyes colder, his smile thinner, as if every warning gave him some satisfaction. At first I laughed it off. I thought, let the young man have his clipboard. He'll tire out eventually. But he didn't. Each letter he dropped in my mailbox grew sterner. Violation notice. Final warning. Potential fine. The kind of paper meant to scare you, printed on heavy stock with an HOA letterhead to make it feel like law. My neighbors, most of them younger families, kept their heads down. I'd catch glimpses of them watching Derek stride down the street, some closing blinds as he passed, others giving him a nervous wave. Nobody liked him, but nobody dared say it aloud. Fear has a way of silencing people. For me, though, it wasn't fear. It was anger, a deep, gnawing anger that this man, half my age, thought he could walk into my life, onto my land, and strip away dignity one violation at a time. But there was more than pride at stake. I live on a fixed income, consisting of a pension and Social Security. Fines add up fast, too many, and they threaten liens, too many liens, and they whisper foreclosure. I wasn't just fighting to keep a shed cedar brown. I was fighting to keep the home Margaret and I built, the place where my grandchildren still run through the yard when they visit. Every morning, I woke to find Derek's shadow growing longer across my porch. I felt the noose tightening, and with each intrusion, I saw more clearly that this wasn't about rules or beautification. This was about power. Derek liked the way it felt, the way I bristled, the way neighbors cowered. He liked being the wolf among sheep, and men like that never stop until someone forces them to. I wasn't sure I had the strength to be that someone anymore, but I knew this much. If I didn't stand, I'd lose everything. And so, when I saw him hop my fence that cold morning, clipboard tucked under his arm like a weapon, I knew the battle wasn't coming. It was already here. The week after Derek hopped my fence, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd finally gotten the message that my yard wasn't his playground. But men like Derek don't back down. They double down. It started small, almost subtle. A notice was tucked into my mailbox about excessive debris near my oak tree. I went out there with a rake, confused, and found only fallen acorns scattered like marbles across the roots. Was I supposed to ask the squirrels to clean up after themselves? I crumpled the letter and tossed it onto my workbench. A day later, another notice arrived. Unauthorized alterations to perimeter fencing. He meant the gate, the one I had built, painted, and electrified in secret. He didn't know about the wires, but he knew it looked sturdier, stronger than the standard model. In his eyes, strength meant defiance. I called the HOA office, demanded an explanation. The secretary's voice was clipped, robotic. "Mr. Whitaker, we've had several complaints filed by our patrolman, Mr. Miller. You'll need to comply or face a fine." "Comply?" I nearly shouted into the phone. "With acorns? With a fence that's been standing for 30 years? Are you out of your minds?" "Sir, we're only enforcing community standards." Community standards. That phrase rattled around in my skull until it tasted like rust. The next week, I found a bright orange paper taped to my door. It read, "Final notice. Non-compliance will result in daily fines." Daily fines. At my age, retired and on a fixed income, even $50 a day might as well have been $500. The threat wasn't just financial, it was existential. I could lose my house over this. I stormed down to the HOA office, a squat beige building near the subdivision entrance. Derek wasn't there, but I could feel his presence in every framed community rule, lining the walls. The receptionist gave me a cold smile, her eyes flickering toward the security camera above her desk. "Mr. Whitaker, you'll need to take it up at the board meeting," she said. "When's the damn meeting?" I barked. "Next Thursday." I circled the date in red on my calendar. That weekend I caught my neighbor Lisa, a young mother of two, glancing nervously at my yard as she loaded groceries into her minivan. I waved. She hesitated, then hurried over, lowering her voice. "Tom, listen," she whispered, eyes darting toward the street. "Derek's been talking about you. Says you're a problem resident. He's telling folks you're dangerous, that you've booby-trapped your yard." My stomach sank. "Did he mention the gate?" "No specifics, just warnings." She bit her lip. "People are scared. They don't want to get on his bad side." I studied her face, saw the fear there, but also sympathy. She wanted to help, but she had kids, a mortgage, and a husband working long hours. She couldn't afford to take a stand. "I appreciate you telling me," I said softly. "Don't worry, Lisa. I'll handle it." She nodded quickly and hurried back to her car, as though speaking to me had already put her on a list. By the time the board meeting arrived, Derek had stacked a small mountain of paper against me. Photos of my yard, accusations of unauthorized electrical work, unsafe storage, and non-compliant landscaping. Each file was heavier than the last, all designed to crush me under the weight of bureaucracy. I sat in the fluorescent-lit meeting hall, the smell of burnt coffee lingering, as Derek strutted in like a conquering hero. Clipboard in hand, pressed shirt, boots clicking against the tile. He nodded to the board members, 5 men and women, middle-aged, tired, complicit. "This is a matter of community safety," Derek began, his voice sharp, rehearsed. "Mr. Whitaker has repeatedly ignored notices. His shed is non-compliant. His fence is altered without approval. His property contains potential hazards that endanger children." I slammed my hand on the table. "Hazards? The only hazard here is you trespassing on my land at dawn like a thief." The board members shifted uncomfortably. Derek smirked. "I have photographic evidence." He slid a series of glossy photos across the table. Shots of my yard, my tools, even me standing on my porch with a wrench in hand. The invasion of privacy made my skin crawl. One board member, a balding man with wire-rimmed glasses, cleared his throat. "Mr. Whitaker, we'd prefer you to comply before this escalates further. Perhaps repaint the shed, adjust the fence, clear the debris." "Debris!" I barked. "That's nature. That's acorns." Laughter rippled from the small audience in the back, but it was short-lived. Derek shot them a glare, and silence fell again. I realized then that Derek wasn't just enforcing rules. He was manufacturing violations, twisting them, weaponizing them. And the board, whether through fear or apathy, let him. That night I sat on my porch long after midnight, the cicadas buzzing in the trees. My hands trembled as I held Margaret's old coffee mug, chipped on the rim. I thought about her laughter, about the way she used to plant flowers along the fence line. Would she want me to fight, or would she tell me to let it go, to preserve my peace? But peace doesn't exist when someone like Derek breathes down your neck. He wanted me broken, humiliated, forced out. The thought of losing my home, the place where my grandchildren ran barefoot on summer afternoons, was unbearable. My chest ached with rage and grief. And then I looked at the gate. My gate? The hum of electricity was barely audible, a whisper of defiance in the night. For the first time in days, a grim smile tugged at my lips. I wasn't broken. Not yet. The harassment didn't stop. Derek began circling my house more frequently, sometimes twice a day. I caught him photographing my windows, muttering into his phone. Notices arrived faster, fines threatened louder. One morning I found my mailbox stuffed with 6 envelopes, all from the HOA. 6 violations in one day. It was a campaign now, systematic, meant to drown me in paper and fear. Neighbors avoided my eyes. Some whispered that Derek wanted me gone so the HOA could seize the property, resell it at a profit. Whether true or not, the possibility sank claws into my mind. But here's the thing about pushing a man too far. Eventually, he pushes back. I began keeping a journal, documenting every visit, every notice, every trespass. I installed a small camera on the porch, hidden beneath the eaves. I recorded his footsteps, his smirks, his violations of my space. Each page in my journal, each clip on my camera, was a nail in Derek's coffin. Still, one question haunted me. Would the evidence be enough? Or would I need to let him fall into the trap I'd built with my own hands? The stage was set. Derek was arrogant, emboldened, circling like a predator, certain of his kill. But I was no longer prey. I was waiting. And soon he'd touch that gate. The night before it happened, the air was thick and restless. I couldn't sleep. I sat on my porch rocker, staring at the iron gate, humming faintly in the moonlight. My journal was thick with entries. My camera had hours of footage, and still Derek kept coming. He thought I was just an old man rattling in his cage, but he hadn't seen me with my back to the wall. By dawn, the cicadas were still quiet, and the dew lay heavy on the grass. I heard it again. The boots. That sharp crunch on the gravel set my teeth on edge. He didn't even try to be stealthy anymore. He wanted me to hear him. Derek appeared out of the mist, clipboard tucked under his arm, that same smug grin plastered on his face. His voice cut through the morning air. "Mr. Whitaker, you're making this harder than it has to be." I didn't answer. I sat perfectly still in the rocker, my coffee steaming in hand. The porch light buzzed faintly above me. He marched up to the gate, shaking his head. "Non-compliant fencing, unauthorized modifications, unsafe wiring. I warned you." He set down the clipboard, pulled a folded notice from his pocket, and waved it in the air. "This is the last one before daily fines hit. You'll be out of here within the year." I let the words hang in the air, my silence heavier than any argument. His eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, his fingers curling around the cold iron bars of the gate. That was when it happened. The snap of electricity cracked like lightning, sharp and merciless. Derek let out a strangled yell, his body jolting backward as sparks danced off the iron. His clipboard flew into the dirt, papers scattering like startled birds. He stumbled, clutching his hand, face twisted in shock and rage. "You!" he spat, his voice trembling. "You electrified the gate? That's illegal. That's assault." I rose slowly from the rocker, every joint stiff but steady, my shadow stretching long across the porch. "No, Derek," I said calmly, my voice low and steady. "That's self-defense. You had no business touching it." He glared at me, teeth bared like a wolf. "I'll have you arrested. I'll have your house condemned. You think you can scare me?" I took a step forward, the wood creaking under my boots. "I don't need to scare you. I just need to show the truth." And that's when I lifted the small camera from the porch railing. The red light blinked, steady and unblinking. "I've been recording for weeks. Every trespass, every violation, every time you stepped onto my land uninvited." His bravado faltered just for a moment. He looked from the gate to the camera, to the scattered notices at his feet. His face paled. The sound of engines broke the silence. Down the street, cars pulled up one after another. Neighbors climbed out, whispering to each other, drawn by the noise. Lisa stood at the edge of her lawn, arms folded, eyes locked on Derek. Even the board members appeared, summoned for what was supposed to be another routine check. The timing was perfect. Too perfect. I raised my voice loud enough for all to hear. "This man has trespassed on my property more than a dozen times. He's harassed me with false violations, threatened me with fines, and just now tried to force my gate. The camera doesn't lie." Gasps rippled through the small crowd. Phones came out, recording. Derek's arrogance began to crack. "That's not," he stammered, pointing at me, then the gate. "He's dangerous. He wired it like a trap." One of the board members, the man with the wire-rimmed glasses, stepped forward, voice hesitant. "Mr. Miller, we've told you before. Patrol doesn't mean entering property without permission. If he has proof." His gaze flicked to me, then back to Derek. Lisa called out, her voice steady. "He's right. I've seen you on his land at night. You've been harassing him." Murmurs grew louder, support spreading like fire through dry grass. Neighbors who once hid behind curtains now stood shoulder to shoulder. I lifted the journal, its spine thick with ink. "Every word documented, every notice saved. And this," I waved the camera, Shows it all. For the first time, Derek looked small. The man who strutted like a soldier now shuffled back, eyes darting, hands trembling. His mask of control slipped. But he tried one last gambit. He squared his shoulders, puffed his chest, and shouted, "This is all for community safety. He's the one endangering everyone. If you don't enforce the rules, this neighborhood will fall apart." The board member shook his head slowly. "No, Derek. A community falls apart when fear replaces trust, and you've been the source of that fear." The silence that followed was louder than his shouting. He looked around desperately, searching for an ally. None came. Not a single neighbor stood with him. And then the final blow. Another car pulled up, this one with flashing lights. Not the HOA patrol, the county sheriff. Two deputies stepped out, hands resting casually on their belts. They approached, calm but watchful. "We had a call about a disturbance," one said. "What's going on here?" I gestured toward Derek. "Officer, this man has been trespassing on my property repeatedly. I have it all recorded. This morning he tried to force my gate and got himself shocked." The deputy looked at Derek, then at the camera, then at the scattered papers. His jaw tightened. "Mr. Miller, is that true?" Derek's mouth opened, then closed. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. The crowd's eyes burned into him. The deputy sighed. "Why don't we go have a little talk, sir?" As they led him away, his boots dragging against the gravel, Derek's eyes met mine. They weren't smug anymore. They were filled with something I hadn't seen before. Fear. I stood tall on my porch, the morning sun breaking over the rooftops, painting the world gold. For the first time in weeks, my chest loosened. The battle wasn't over, not yet, but the tide had turned, and everyone had seen it. The sheriff's car rolled slowly out of the cul-de-sac with Derek in the back seat. His head hung low. The crowd of neighbors dispersed in murmurs, the air lighter now, as though a storm had finally broken. I stood there on the porch, the old oak shading me, my coffee gone cold in my hand, and I felt something I hadn't in weeks, peace. The board members lingered, shuffling awkwardly. The man with wire-rimmed glasses cleared his throat. "Mr. Whitaker, we owe you an apology. We allowed Miller too much authority. That won't happen again." I let out a tired breath, my eyes narrowing. "You didn't just allow it, you enabled it. You saw him harass folks, and you said nothing. People were scared because you refused to do your jobs." His face flushed crimson. Another board member, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, stepped forward. "You're right. We failed this community, but we'll fix it. Derek's position is terminated effective immediately. The board will review every citation he issued. If you're willing, Mr. Whitaker, we'd like you to sit on a new committee, oversight for patrols, to make sure this never happens again." I chuckled dryly. "I've had enough of committees to last a lifetime, but if you want advice, here it is. Treat your neighbors like neighbors, not subjects. That's all it takes." They nodded, chastened, and drifted away, the weight of shame pulling at their shoulders. Over the next few days, something remarkable happened. The very neighbors who once ducked behind curtains started knocking on my door. Lisa came first, her kids in tow. She brought a pie, still warm, and tears glistened in her eyes as she said, "Thank you for standing up when the rest of us were too afraid." I waved her thanks away with a smile. Courage is contagious. Next time, you won't need me to go first. Soon others followed. Old Joe down the street brought me fresh cucumbers from his garden. The young couple at the corner invited me for dinner. Even folks I barely knew shook my hand, gratitude spilling from their voices. For weeks, we'd lived under Derek's shadow, isolated by fear. Now the street felt alive again. Neighbors chatting on lawns, kids riding bikes without parents peering nervously out the window. The community was breathing again. News travels fast in a small town. Within days, word spread that Derek wasn't just fired. He was under investigation. Trespassing, harassment, abuse of authority. Some even whispered he'd falsified violations for financial gain. Whether true or not, his name became poison. No other HOA wanted him. The man who once strutted down our streets now slinked through town, his arrogance gone. I never saw him again after that morning, but sometimes when the wind rattles the gate at night, I imagine his face twisted in shock. And I sleep a little easier knowing justice found him. With Derek gone, the board rescinded every false violation against me. No fines, no threats. My cedar shed stood proudly in the sun, its wood weathered but honest. The oak tree spread its arms wide, dropping acorns without fear of citations. And the gate, the gate. I left the wiring in place, not because I wanted to hurt anyone, but because it reminded me of something important. That even in old age, even when the world thinks you're weak, you can still build something strong enough to stand your ground. My grandchildren came to visit soon after. They ran through the yard, laughing, chasing each other around the oak tree. My daughter hugged me tight, whispering, "Dad, I was so scared for you, but you proved you're tougher than any of them." I just smiled, watching the kids climb the fence I built decades ago, their joy echoing through the yard. This home, our home, was safe again. At 70 years old, I've learned that battles don't end when you retire. Sometimes they just change shape. A younger man with a clipboard can be just as dangerous as any war I fought in my youth. But the principle remains the same. When someone tries to strip away your dignity, you fight. Not with fists, not with cruelty, but with truth, with courage, with neighbors standing beside you. Margaret's photo sits on the mantel, her smile frozen in time. I often find myself speaking to it in the quiet evenings. We won, Maggie. We kept it. And I like to think, wherever she is, she's proud. The oak still sways in the breeze. The garden still smells of tomatoes and basil in summer. And I still sip coffee on my porch each morning, knowing this land, this house, these memories, they're safe. Because one stubborn old man decided he wouldn't bow to fear. And that, I think, is the true heart of community.